You were really
Why
close.
no? Why the R? Why not leaving it? Because I would think if you were looking at it from a pronunciation's point.
Okay, so the reason we keep the R is because the last name is Czech, and they don't just have the R; they have a super R. So it's really Payer.
Okay.
Keep it like.
And you got to roll it.
You gotta roll it, and I don't even roll it like right.
Okay. So then you just go with Pager.
Pager, yeah.
Okay. All right, Athena Pager. So, are you ready for the semester to start?
That's a good question. I have been actually really nervous for the semester to start because I have been enjoying the slow pace of this winter break so much. And also, the last semester was pretty slow paced and easygoing. So.
England
Yeah.
is slow paced and easygoing.
Well, the thing is, there wasn't exactly too much responsibility and too many school deadlines, but saying that it was slow paced and easygoing is kind of the opposite. It's very crazy there. I love, you never walk on an empty sidewalk ever, and whenever everybody uses a tube, which is the underground, their subway, and when you go down there, it's always packed, no matter what time of day. And you can go down there, listen to 5 different languages, and then come back up and into like either a flurry of people or maybe just the regular amount of foot traffic. It's a lot different from here where there really aren't too many people, but there's always something to do, something that needs to be done.
All right, so explain to us and to everybody who may not know exactly what you did last semester.
Yeah, so last semester I went to London, the UK, with 22 other students as part of a study abroad semester with Millikan. And it's usually kind of known as a theater program, and I don't study theater, I study English literature and communication. But when I was over there, many of the classes applied to what I was learning because there's a lot of overlap between English and theater. And just being in London, I learned, I was surrounded by people, places that were important to the history of literature, which is really cool. And as a side note, while I was over there, I was also the RA in London because there are so many students over there that campus life now sends over just somebody to be kind of their point of contact.
Okay, so was it hard being an RA?
It was hard being an RA because here being an RA is a little busier and has quite a lot of responsibilities, but also kind of more guidance. And over there, I had one other RA with me, but we were kind of a little bit more alone. Yeah, and it was just the mere fact that we're thousands of miles from home base is like, that makes it, any communication, a bit harder. Especially since at Millikan, everybody is very face-to-face.
Right, and here, and when you're that far away, it's hard to be face-to-face.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me about, well, you got to study on the globe.
Yeah, I did. It was incredible. It was my debut.
It was your debut on the Globe Theater stage.
Yeah. It was fascinating because I believe that the performance was about 20 minutes long. Maybe not that long. But we didn't pick a section of a play and give everybody a character, but we took the monologues from Henry V and we split them up into a couple lines, and everybody got random lines that were split up and into some of the prose pieces and some of the pieces with meter, and our job was to kind of make it all make sense and deliver it coherently. Now, anybody sitting in the audience probably wouldn't understand what was going on just because of the just because it's Shakespeare, it's an old language. But by the end, we talked to a few people who were in the audience, and they said that they didn't really understand what was going on because of the language and because everybody was flipping around, changing the lines, and there was a new person talking every couple seconds. But the fascinating thing was that they kind of felt like they understood, and they knew that we understood what was going on, because after all, we had been practicing these lines for weeks, and we kept the energy really high. And then it was just really cool because we learned Shakespeare in a really intimate way that you just can't get here unless you, I mean, nothing's impossible,
Right.
but
what do you take as a curriculum when you're in London?
when you're in London, well, it varies between every professor that goes over, because the London semester includes globe classes, which those include voice classes, movement classes, acting, text, criticism, and they vary every day. And you're there on Tuesdays and Thursdays from maybe 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. So it's a good chunk of class. But that's something that I believe stays consistent every year. And then they actually send a Millikan professor over to teach a bulk of the classes. And this year it was Dr. Tom Duncanson, and he taught, now I think it's comparative media ethics. I'm drawing a blank, but basically communication related classes and a lot of ethics related classes. And so for maybe 2 or 3 hours, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we talk about that. And then on Wednesdays, we had a class with a professor from Birmingham that made a trip down every week to London. And he, this year, taught us history of theater and contemporary theater. But basically, the cool thing about London is that we got Fridays and Mondays off. So that was so that we had a chance to travel. That was strongly encouraged. But also, anybody who didn't want to travel was strongly encouraged to explore London, because that, for me, was also just kind of the most vital part of me going over there. Definitely learned a lot in the classes, but I got to do a lot of cool things while I was over there because I just had really long weekends.
So tell me what it is about London that you like so much.
I love that there were so many artists over there. It was very much a city of theater, a city of literature, but also a city of activists, and that really influences just like the quality, the type of content that you see while you're over there, even just walking around the street. So, to give you an example, the theater, first of all, I fell in love with theater, but theater over there is much more popular, and so it's cheaper, and there's more of it, so it's more common for just regular people to go out on a Tuesday or Wednesday night and see a piece of theater in maybe a theater that's been open for 60, 70 years. And that's really difficult, especially here in the Midwest. And then even in places like New York, where there are a ton of theaters, but it's really expensive. So
Okay.
Yeah.
You said activists. What kind of activism did you see there?
The coolest example of activism I saw was the Extinction Rebellion movement, and they had very interesting tactics, and there was one point I believe they glued themselves to a bridge. Yeah, for I don't.
That's
That's
excellent.
something to look up. Just type in
That's
Extinction
excellent.
Rebellion. It'll be like one of the first things that pops up. And some of them, there were just so many people. They got, yeah.
Why did they glue themselves to a bridge?
Yeah, I was going to explain, but then I realized I forgot. So, the next thing.
I'm gonna
that
glue
happened-
myself to a pharmacy.
No.
Get your flu shot.
Their main tactic was to kind of disrupt, and we'll get back to that because they were trying to disrupt to show how climate change will eventually disrupt our lives to the point where we can't live. And for some of what they did, it was just too radical, and there was actually a very controversial moment when the police banned any Extinction Rebellion activism from the City of London, and hundreds of people were arrested in Trafalgar Square, and it was something like a drop in the pebble, but it blew my mind because it was over in a week. If that happened in the United States, it would be something so troublesome that we just wouldn't be able to get over it.
Do they have freedom of speech in England? I mean, what are their laws? Because that's the thing. Like, that would be such a constitutional, thing here.
Now, they have like a weird situation with their constitution. They don't exactly have a completed constitution, but freedom of speech has been a law and a series of laws for a while. And actually on the World Press Freedom Index, I think they're maybe like 10 places higher than the United States in terms of freedom of press and freedom of expression. But the unfortunate part about Extinction Rebellion is there were some kind of weird dissenters that called themselves Extinction Rebellion but weren't. And we're gonna get back to glue, but one of them got on social media and threatened to glue themselves to the outside of a tube train, and the next morning a few people happened to jump on a train that is part of the outer web of the tube, so nothing that would disrupt everybody, but people in London were like, okay, no more Extinction Rebellion. This is out of hand. You try to disrupt us getting to work. This is bad. And so they are still active, but that marked the point when they kind of fell out of the papers and things like that.
Oh, that sounds like an awful lot of fun, though.
It was a lot of fun for a couple weeks.
Okay. You talked about climate change. That's one of the big deals. It's a much bigger deal in London and in Europe than it is in the United States. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, part of the reason I think it's really big in London is because the climate change will make London hotter and colder, and London's regular just architecture is just set up. It's actually pretty temperate in London, and if it gets too cold and too hot, it will just break the city. If there's ice on the ground, it's awful for London because it's just really dangerous and they don't have the infrastructure to handle it. That's one thing. Throughout the rest of Europe, it's I'm not too well aware of the rest of Europe, how they feel about climate change, but they care about it more than the United States, I can say that.
One thing about Great Britain, in general, is being, a relatively small landmass that's, it's an island. As the ocean rises, they become much smaller quicker than we do.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that, like, for selfish reasons, but honestly, I would think that that's a huge problem. So, but you're right, the temperature differences, I never thought about that, but with all that stone,
Yeah.
yeah, because stone, water getting into cracks and freezing and then thawing out, that's never a good thing, so it's interesting.
And I'll say after this past semester, I've been thinking even more about climate change. I always, of course, believed in it and thought that it was really well supported and that it is a problem. But while I was in London, I recently went to New Orleans and I enjoyed it very much. But it's very real to these cities because they're right next to an ocean.
Yeah.
And I kind of have a feeling that a lot of regular, a huge percentage of the United States population doesn't care about it because how close are they to water?
Right. I mean, if the ocean rises a foot, that's catastrophic for New Orleans and for Great Britain and so forth. But here in the flyover, I know it's catastrophic for everyone, but I think tactile, immediate reality of it is a lot easier to understand if you're right on the coast. Like that house there, it will be in the ocean if this rises, versus, here we talk about how the, tornadoes and, blizzards and, it's going to be Stormageddon everywhere. But there, I think it's just easier to grasp.
Actually, though, the other thing is that in the United States, a large, huge percentage of our population is actually within 5 miles of an ocean.
Well, and that was the other thing I was going to ask. So the activism as well as the climate. So do you think, you were in London, you were in a major metro area, do you think that there is truly a big difference between England with climate change in general and with activism versus just being in a large city? Because there was huge activism in Washington, D.C., of course, when I was there. And then, Portland, Oregon, my friends from Oregon are also much better with climate concerns and actually doing things about it than we are here. So I was just curious, do you think it's England or do you think it's both?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of both. And I've never really lived in a big city. I grew up in Decatur, Illinois, and I've been around the world, but I've pretty much lived here. In London, it did seem to just have characteristics of, there are a lot of people in this city, and a lot of people really care. But also, the UK definitely has had an extremely long history and intense history of just political outspokenness, and because they've had strong leaders, awful leaders, and even right now they're kind of going through the same thing that we are, which is basically Boris Johnson is British Trump. They even look similar. But,
yeah, but Boris keeps winning. I mean, there's got to be a percentage of Englandites who love him.
Well, there are a lot of people who do support leaving the UK for reasons that aren't xenophobic. And I was talking to this one person, and he basically said that the reason that they want to leave is because they think that being part of the EU is good, but they're not getting enough out of the EU as they think is possible. They think they're just kind of supporting a lot of the EU, and that's not exactly fair. They want something better. They don't want the entire system to collapse. They just want to take a step back. And though there are likely some realistic flaws, that sounds like a good plan on paper, but not in reality. That's not exactly it's reasonable. that sounds like something that even I could agree with. Like, that just makes perfect sense. So, like, it's kind of, they also had, there's a large percentage of the people that don't like Boris, but they really don't want to support remaining. They also maybe don't like the Labour Party that much, because Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, is actually, like, he's kind of unpopular just among just a lot of people. He's controversial.
How was he controversial? Like,
Especially leading up to some election points, he said just a few things that put the people off. I can't remember specifics.
so it just rubs people the wrong
Yeah,
way. Like,
exactly.
his personality is kind of Nancy Pelosi-esque in a way. I mean,
Mhm.
I hate to say that, because the more I learn about Nancy Pelosi and watch her and read about everything she's done, she is super impressive, you know, but there's a large percentage of the population, even amongst Democrats, where somehow she rubs them the wrong way, and
Yeah.
I've been there too, so.
Yeah, that happens a lot, and I think, it's pretty much the same.
Okay.
The only thing that I've questioned, that maybe you can help talk a little bit about it, is younger people, people your age, currently with the EU and with London or with England connected. You get to travel through Europe. You get to, look for jobs in anywhere that you want in Europe. It's a lot easier, to move back and forth, much like moving from state to state in the United States. And if England leaves, goes through with the whole Brexit idea, then that could mean that kids your age, people who are out looking for a job, no longer have that easy movement between England and Europe. Is that a concern among people your age there?
Yeah, I think it is. Now, nobody ever said that to me directly, but a lot of the people that I met in London that were maybe my age, maybe a little bit older, but were just getting started in their lives, were working freelance in different positions around theater, and they were not from the UK. There was one girl from Slovakia that I met, and she just moved there, and it was kind of amazing, because it's kind of the equivalent of me moving up to Chicago or New York and doing the same thing, but it was crazy because of I really admired her. But I think that it's a concern for them over there, because, like I said before, the UK is a really artistic and really enterprising type of place where there's just a lot to do, and it's a great place to learn. Maybe not the easiest place to live, but a great place to learn and be for a while. So, taking them away, taking the UK away from the EU will definitely affect the youth. As a side note, it might be a little bit easier for United States citizens to get internships there and things like that, because the UK will also be at a deficit for new talent and young talent, because so many people will need to apply to get in, things like that.
Okay.
So what was the coolest thing you saw over there?
Coolest thing I saw, like, some of the theater I saw over there was really cool. There was one of the final shows we saw was called The Three Sisters, and it was a remake of Chekhov's Three Sisters, but it was set in Nigeria whenever the Igbo split from Nigeria, and it was in the National Theater, and the National Theater is humongous. They had an entire house on the set, and it just, whenever they moved it, they didn't take the house apart, they just pushed it behind the stage, and that theater was so huge, and it was a well done production too. That was something that sticks out in my brain.
Did you do any tourist type stuff? I mean, theater's cool too, but like, what types of stuff did you see?
I did the London Eye. That was really cool. One of the first things we did as a class, the first week we were doing Performing the City, and that's basically Dr. Duncanson taking us around and doing touristy things, but teaching us too. We went to Shakespeare's birthplace,
Oh,
and
that's
that wasn't
cool.
in London, but that was in Stratford upon Avon,
Yeah.
Shakespeare upon Avon. But then in London, one of the cooler things I think was seeing Big Ben. Not because you could really see Big Ben, but because there were so many people around that were kind of disappointed because Big Ben is just covered in scaffolding right now.
Yeah.
It's just like thinking like,
It's like
I don't
they
know.
get there and then it's like, oh.
yeah,
You know.
oh, cool.
So
It'll be pretty in a couple years, I guess.
Did you go outside of London and see things, or did you just stay in London the whole time?
Yeah, I didn't travel as much as other people. There were some people that I swear it seemed like they were traveling every weekend. But I went to Edinburgh. I also went to Madrid, and that was really cool because I got to reunite with an old friend that I met here at Millikan
Yeah.
when he came and studied here. They actually briefly helped the Decaturian out a little bit by taking pictures.
Now, how did you get to Madrid?
I flew.
Did you fly? Okay.
So
Well, I wondered if you swam. I mean, I was going to be super duper impressed if that was the case.
yeah.
Are you a fan of the Royals?
Okay, so what do people over there think of them?
Okay, I actually didn't get into sports over there.
No.
The
Oh,
royals,
the
the
royals.
British
Okay,
royalty.
okay.
Because, like, I'm fascinated.
I get it.
But I think my fascination, from what I've understood, is that people over there are just kind of like we are here, like with politicians. Like, yeah, there they are, whatever. But what do people think of them?
The people I talk to, of course, there are probably people out there that are just crazy about them because that Netflix series, The Crown,
Yeah.
is telling like the whole story. But a lot of people like know the names and things like that, but are like they're kind of just they're in the papers. Sometimes I pick them up as like a guilty pleasure. I read about their lives, but it's kind of. I think that it's difficult to say. I really think that people young people especially, like just don't care.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like that's what I've kind of gotten the impression that the rest of the world is much more fascinated about it than they are, and maybe it's because the rest of the world, since we don't have a monarchy, is very interesting and exotic. But when you're there with it, they're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I
interesting.
don't either.
Don't get Dr. Duncanson started about the royals. He very annoyed by them.
Is
And
he?
yeah, he is.
How
Why?
so?
And I'm kind of annoyed by them too. Well, one of the reasons is because a lot of the history is told kind of from their point of view. We
Oh,
hear
very
about
much from their point of
We
view.
hear about the great things they did, and but there were some leaders that had great reigns, but the people suffered
Yeah.
greatly, and just the fact that they're kind of still around, and the queen actually does have a little bit of power where she can kind of delay parliament a little bit, which actually was a huge problem one of the first weeks that I was there. But just the fact that they are still like important in the public eye and they're kind of a distraction was brought up in our ethics class a couple times, maybe not in the most positive light, and I agree.
The whole thing with Meghan and Harry, we talked about it a little bit last week. I'm not a huge fan of the whole, we're going to step back from being a senior royal, but we're still going to keep some of these perks, and yet we're going to split our time, and. It does make you, for me, it's still fun to think about. I'm still fascinated by it. But it does make you that scenario has made me think, what is the point of all of this, actually, you know?
So what's it like spending a semester with T-Dunk?
It's really fun. I'm gonna tell a secret that to my fellow communication students. T-Dunk is really cool in London. He's cool here. This is a diplomatic thing. But he's really cool in London, and he's just, in general, a really cool guy. And the fun thing is that you don't start class until like 11 o'clock or noon. That's fun. And class time with him is really having a difficult time describing this, but it's just like here, where it's very lecture based and you only have 1 or 2 papers, but it's usually a little bit more engaging because you spend just a lot of time with T-Dunk. And the cool thing is that he really cares about your London experience because he really loves London. And so he also, one of my favorite parts about the trip was he took us, maybe during one of the last few weeks, maybe like 2 weeks before we left or something, he took us on a literary tour of London. And he just knows, he's very knowledgeable about the areas and things like that. And going to London with T-Dunk was, for me, he was probably the best teacher for me to go with because just how cool he is.
I think it would have been fun with Ann Matthews.
Oh
too,
yeah,
but,
okay, yeah.
But yeah,
that's true.
T-Dunk, and it seems like both of them are, I mean, I don't know if this is still a secret yet, but he's retiring after this year, and Ann Matthews isn't going to go back to London for a while, so.
I think next year it's going to be, now I don't know if this is a secret or not, but it's, I've heard from other people that it's Ngazi Nora.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it's not a secret, but like, yeah. So, that'll be really cool too.
Yeah,
So
it'll be a different experience.
It'll
It'll
be
be a
really-
different experience for the kids. It's just, I've had kids come back who've, went with Ann Matthews, and I've had kids who've come back with T-Dunk, and they've enjoyed the experience immensely. Tom Duncanson is quite an interesting fellow, and when you hear and talk about global warming, I know that that's a big deal with him.
yeah, even during the time we were over there, he went to the big international conference in Madrid,
Yeah.
like a weekend after I went to Madrid, and so he was there, and it's always a topic he brings up, and I completely share his sentiments almost all the time. Even though he's like very pessimistic, I think that this is something we really need to focus on.
So, World Press Freedom, you did an awful lot with that too.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was one of our final assignments, I believe, for comparative media ethics. And basically it was just a class, and everybody's job was to create one big paper that included 5 pages from each country, 5 pages telling basically explaining the status of every country according to their rating on the World Press Freedom Index, available on rsf.org. It's a great website, it's a great organization, and my role for that assignment was the editor, which was just organizing everything, and in that process I got to read everybody's papers, and I learned quite a bit from that. I eventually wrote about Brazil. That was my particular piece, and I did write the introduction, but that was a really cool assignment that I think I'm proud of. I think that we got a good grade on it, everybody.
You don't know yet.
I do know, but I actually was able. Dr. Duncanson let us turn it in after everybody got home, and so I finished it, and then I sent it in. So we didn't. I never got a big paper slapped on my desk and with an A, B, C.
Right.
So I think that it worked out pretty well.
Okay. All right. What else can you tell us that you really enjoyed over there? What did you go to see that you wish everyone could see?
I spent a lot of time at the South Bank Center, and that's a cultural center, and it's got a lot going on that sits right on the Thames. And the cool thing is that they held the London Literary Festival there. And I actually was able to participate as part of World Poetry Day when I was there, because I was the only U.S. citizen in the group, but there were 15 people that wrote poems and presented them. But that place is really cool, it's really open, and there's some really fun things going on. And I'd really encourage, if anybody goes to London, to see if there's a film festival, a literary festival, or something like that, a theater festival, because London is way more vibrant than you think. So, it's maybe like just a specific landmark. I'd say the Tokyo Garden, or in Holland Park. It's really beautiful. So,
Okay.
I took some friends there.
Did you?
Yeah.
What was it like with, you were there with a group of American students.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys run into a lot of English students, or, did you run into other people doing school?
Yeah, we did. We actually shared a flat with a couple students from Ithaca College. Is it Ithaca University? I don't know.
In New York, yeah.
Yeah. And they, those are a few people we ran into. There were also other American students studying at the Globe. There was some from Syracuse and Rutgers. And we occasionally bumped into them and things like that. And then there were people from one other university that I remember, a group of the Millibubble kind of took a Friday afternoon and went and met them in Hyde Park. They were from a theater school, and they were U.S. citizens, but they were studying in the UK.
Okay. So you liked that?
Yeah.
Would you tell people they should go to do this?
I would. I think that whenever you make a decision to go and live in another country, you kind of need to approach it like you're Indiana Jones, kind of. And Jason behind me is laughing really hard.
Okay, why Indiana Jones?
Because you... It's because Indiana Jones is my favorite. But really, whenever you go over there, you are going to be alone in some way or another, because you're kind of, even if you go with a group of your closest friends, you're going to, even if you're not homesick, you're going to miss guidance from your parents all the time. You're going to miss guidance from your professors, your friends on campus. I pretty much left my entire social group here. But when you go over there, you need to act like Indiana Jones. And that's actually a lesson that my dad taught me whenever I went to Italy the first time. But he goes on adventures, and he always is kind of improvising, but thinking ahead, like there's a greater goal. Like he's on a mission, but he meets people along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And just being in that very adventurous attitude. And really feeling like every day you have something to do. That's my tip for anybody who thinks that studying abroad is for them. And so I think that I would strongly encourage going but if you think that you're gonna miss Milliken more than you'll enjoy being over there, don't go. It's okay. Find the right time to travel. If you feel like you really want to travel and it's like making your bones itch, then go. Find an
What was
opportunity.
the hardest part?
The hardest part? I think, I think leaving my friends behind was kind of hard because there were a lot of times when I felt like going and doing something, but I didn't exactly feel very close with people, and that kind of hit me right in the middle, like the beginning of the middle through the trip. It didn't last long because I did find people that are now my really good friends over there, and it was kind of like a roller coaster. Like it had its ups and downs where I felt lonely and then I didn't. But I think there were points of the trip where I didn't feel like Indiana Jones. So I think that had a lot to do with. You're gonna keep saying that because
if you are an introvert,
Mm-hmm.
all right, and if you are, shy, how hard is it for people to go and do what you've done?
I'd say it's really hard. It's I don't consider myself an extreme introvert, but my introverted tendencies sometimes did cause a little bit of the low points. But that being said, if you are an introvert, one way to still enjoy studying abroad is to go and find things and not be afraid to do things by yourself. And that's kind of how I was during the first half of this semester. Like I went to museums by myself, I went to coffee shops by myself and parks, but yeah, like that's it'll make you approach studying abroad differently, but it's not necessarily an obstacle.
I think being an introvert to some extent makes it easier to go to places you're not as familiar with, because if you're super social, you're really, really anchored to where your social contacts are at, versus if you're more introverted and into kind of internalizing and doing your own thing, well then, so I think there's pros and cons to both, but I think it would be harder to, like for me when I move, it takes me a long time to build up a social circle.
Yeah.
Versus if I was really extroverted, like you can go and pretty much you take the party with you, everywhere you go. So I think but I've never had a hard time going to a place that I haven't known,
Yeah, and that's what I did when I went to Edinburgh. I went completely alone.
Right.
And it was great in a way that going to Madrid and spending a lot of time with people wasn't. It's just being that way all the time and always doing things by myself and thinking like creating your own fun, that can be be after a while.
I consider myself a social introvert, so I'm not like totally introverted where I really, like, I'm not shy, you know what I mean? But I need time for myself because being social is exhausting too. So I can relate to that. Being alone always would be, I think I would get depressed. You know, like I have to be connected to other people, but I have to be able to turn that off too and get away.
You guys kill me. I mean, it's just that much work you guys kill me, but that's okay. I
How
enjoy
so?
it. They suck all the life right out. I know. I love it. I love teaching. I love being around my students. confidence, but it's work.
It blew my mind when you told me that you were an introvert, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was approaching this the whole time like you were the most extreme extrovert.
I understand.
And Scott also is kind of one of these strange, like, social introverts. So he's not totally introverted. And I think it took me years to realize he was an introvert. Like, years of being married to him before it finally dawned on me. No, he's an introvert. So I get, like, everybody's like, what do you mean you're an introvert? He is curious about people to the point he is shameless about what he will ask them. He's not worried about asking anybody anything. If he wants to know, he will ask. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just did that. At the same time, it's his curiosity that drives his ability to ask those questions, if that makes sense. Like, he's not social, he's curious, you know.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm telling you, every time you walk into a classroom this year, you're going to hear the Indiana Jones theme song play.
Well, that's
And also
I'll
have
set
an
it up so it goes
AARP.
The
magazine
AARP,
on
that is now, this is my favorite story about Athena. She was an English major. She came in as a freshman, and she sat down on the very first day that we had to meet our freshman students. And one of our professors had this little word game to play, and they gave everybody this sheet of paper, and they were able to pick this sheet of paper, and then they had to come up with what this was, and they had to come up with a quick pitch for it. And Athena got AARP, and I had just got my AARP card like a week before that. And she was like, yeah, so what would I do? Well, I would get things like, you know, old people can fall and break their hips, so I would have them go through a pumpkin patch or something like that. And I just, you know, since that time I've teased her about the AARP thing.
Are you going to tell the end of the story?
What is the end of the story?
When you finally got one of the magazines at the end of the semester.
Oh, and it had the pumpkin patch.
That is excellent. I never heard the end of the
Walking through a
story,
pumpkin
but
patch,
he came home and he's like, you won't believe what one of my kids did. I was like, okay, yeah, like old folks pumpkin patches, you know. And I thought that was hilarious. I was like, I've got to meet this person, you know. So yeah.
Okay.
And one of my predictions came true.
Yeah, you were on to something.
Okay.
You know, it's true. And in marketing, the thing is, like, one of the things with marketing is very frequently when we have an idea, it's the same idea that a lot of other people have had, and it resonates with them. So it's kind of funny. Here we thought that was such an original thing, but yet it ends up in their magazine, you know, so.
And that's the thing, you know, people will ask things about marketing or selling stuff, and my wife, before she became a nurse practitioner, sold ads for a newspaper and sold cars. So she's pretty good at the whole idea of marketing and ads and taking care of that.
That's pretty cool. Didn't know that.
It is cool. I was horrible at it. I was outstanding at selling cars. I can sell you a car. I was horrible at the marketing side of things. Not so much that my ideas were bad. I got the concept of marketing and so forth. But when I went to Southern Illinois, I had a really hard time getting to know folks that I didn't know before. And, you know, it comes back to being introverted. When I was in marketing in Central Illinois, these were businesses I had grown up around. My father was a business leader in the community, so I knew and I was invested. And so I had a reason to be going and, you know, telling people, hey, you need to grow your business, you know, that type of thing. But when I was taken out of my comfort zone, I kind of lost my connection and my drive, you know, and then all of a sudden it just became about bringing in revenue for the newspaper, and that will never motivate me, you know, so, which is the wrong thing, but I'm much better at healthcare than I am marketing, but I learned a lot about marketing, and I still think about marketing, like, a lot, So
So you guys are back, or you're back. You've got school again. You start Tuesday.
I do.
You don't have any of my classes.
I'm still showing up.
Well, that's fine.
I'm using your news writing class. It's in my calendar too. Like I have that section blocked off, so I'm gonna be there. But I'm going to be using that as mini newsroom time. So I want to know, like the stories that people want to put in the paper. I'll know about them a little bit beforehand, so I can help and get some pictures too. Set it up. Those kids do a lot of work.
Everyone in here is going to be busy on the 28th. The 28th of January. Jeffrey Sterling is coming here. I've told you guys about this. He will be here during that afternoon. He's going to talk to my news writing class. We're going to come and bring him in the radio at 4. We're all going to dinner with him at 5:30.
Me too.
You too?
Woo!
where are we going to dinner at?
Here at the university.
Oh, cool.
And then he'll be giving a speech. I'm glad you guys are so excited about dinner.
Hey, free food when I was in college was pretty awesome. Even grad school, like free food was.
I
And
understand.
actually now,
It's free?
free
Yeah,
food,
it's free.
you know, free food to go listen to medical presentations after work is pretty exciting too, depending on which restaurant it's at.
For everybody that doesn't know, this is the James W. Moore, I think, speech. He will be here Tuesday, January 28th at 7 o'clock. He will be signing books from, oh my goodness, what's the name? The name just jumped out of my head.
You still have to do what's going on.
I know. It's the Novel Ideas bookstore here in Decatur, and the books are available now. They will be available until after he's made his show, and everyone needs to come. Now, what's going around?
What's going around is the flu. It's gonna get us all. Probably not. But it is what's going around. Hang on. Jason's got something he wants to share before we do this. It's the world premiere.
Okay.
We just have to have so many of those legally in the hour or we get in trouble.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand.
What was that?
I was just playing the legal ID that Dr. Lambert recorded a while back because
Oh.
we need those
Excellent. Excellent.
later.
Okay,
So are we
so
good?
what's going around?
Okay, so what's going around is influenza, which is widespread in 46 states, including Illinois, again this year. Still predominating influenza B, the Victoria strain. A little unusual, actually. It's the first time in 27 years that flu B is predominant. And typically, flu B is more predominant later in the year. Same symptoms as, all of the other flu varieties. But flu B does have a propensity to affect children and young adults a little more so than just the elderly. So a little unique. And while flu season is high, severity this year is a little less than what we've seen in the past couple of years. So that is good news. That said, even in a year where severity is not as bad as it have been the past couple of years, we still have so far this flu season alone seen 9.7 million cases of influenza, 87,000 hospitalizations, and 4,800 deaths. So, if you haven't gotten your flu vaccine yet, now is the time. There's always a risk you get your flu shot now, and before it has a chance to take effect, you come in contact with influenza and you get sick from the flu. That's not the fault of the shot, it's just bad luck, But no, it's better to get your shot late rather than never, because years such as last year, we had a dual peak season. We thought the flu season was over and here it came back again. It was flu B last year that caught us late, more typical, but I do worry about a flu A, ramping up later. H1N1 is a flu A. It is the second most common flu variety this year so far. So that's predominantly what we're seeing a lot of. That's the big news thing. We are still seeing in central Illinois a pretty severe viral cold that is associated with a prolonged cough. So 4 weeks of coughing. And some folks have coughed so hard and so long that I've actually done some pertussis testing. Pertussis being the whooping cough or the 100-day cough. It's not common that we see in the office something that we think looks like something beyond a cold or the flu, like pertussis, so. But that's predominantly what's going on right now.
Okay. Anything else?
Everybody, flu shot.
Take your
Can't
flu
stress
shot,
that enough.
wash your
Also, washing
hands.
your hands is important. If you are sick, call into work, stay home, quarantine yourself. Be the good person in all of this, and don't get everybody sick around you. If you have to go out, wear a mask. They do this all the time, and in Japan and the Asian countries, and I don't know why we don't do it here. But if you're not feeling well, put a mask on, and help contain the germs. Influenza, you have to have a special mask to really contain, but I think any type of barrier is better than nothing. So.
Okay, one question that I'm going to ask you, or one thing I've read, I saw something in the New York Times the other day that said that the flu shot is not wonderful this year at catching, and preventing it.
Yeah, and I really wish that we'd stop having this conversation, every year. It's like the flu shot's not working. Well, we need to stop talking about flu vaccine effectiveness in terms of absolute prevention only, because that is one marker or measure for effectiveness. Of course, we want it to absolutely prevent you from catching the flu. But also important, probably most important, is that even in years in which the flu vaccine is not an excellent match, it dramatically decreases your chances of getting hospitalized from flu complications or dying of it. So 2 years ago, we had a vaccine, depending on whose estimates you read, was only about 30% effective in terms of absolute prevention, but we saw an 80% reduction in your chances of being hospitalized or dying from the flu if you're immunized. This year, too soon to tell for sure how effective the vaccine's going to be. First of all, because the season is relatively youngish, and also we don't know if it's going to be another bimodal season or so forth. The statistic I read today was that the vaccine may be only 57%, which is far better than the 30% a couple of years ago. But again, that should not be a reason not to go out and get the vaccine, because if you get the vaccine, it will dramatically decrease your chances of dying of the flu, being hospitalized of the flu, and should minimize the severity of your symptoms and how long you're sick. So it's a really good idea to get the flu shot.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it. All right. That's it for us for today. We don't have, I think they're closing us down pretty soon on break. We're still on the early break hours, so that will be it for today. We will be back next week. We'll be back for a real full 2-hour show, and we will be talking about Jeffrey Sterling again. We'll be talking with whoever it is that we get in here. I'm not sure who we have here next week.
I don't know. We need to have John Blakeman sometime.
And we will be back, and we will see you next week on the Faculty Lounge on 89.5 WJMU, The Quad.
Bye-bye.